Not necessarily. You're giving both sides of.
He said, but I got religion. He said, look, I don't know what you got, but whatever you got, you can get it here.
Let me go get the thing propagated. Okay. Let me write it.
One that's got everybody talking. Almost as controversial as Al-Islam, Christianity.
No. But I was saying you're reading the book.
No, I ain't saying your book.
It said that in the Quran.
Well, we'll talk that in your research. You didn't run across that one. If you did, you didn't see any significance in it.
You start reading the book.
364.
I read your book last night. I'm an expert on Islam, Christianity, and Freemasonry now.
Well, we really have to travel as Muslims through the land and learn from other people. Well, that's what we require.
Very definitely. And with one statement in there, I think that you were way out in left field on when you said that nobody wanted to see it printed. You see, exposés have been written on masonry since the Morgan affair.
I'm guilty of that. That was mine.
That was yours?
That was
I see. You know, sometimes next book you write, you sit down and talk with Prince Hall Masonry for about 20 years, and then you will be able to understand there is a difference between Prince Hall Masonry and other types of masonry. There is a difference.
That it may be, I don't know why, but we are falling behind about 14 years right now. We are going to get started. And two principals are here, and we're going to let them do their thing. In fact, entertain us. I am Herbert Davis, the first vice president of the Product Society. And I hope that what we receive from this particular panel, through this workshop, education. That's the important thing we have. Receive education from all workshops that we have. And for you to use them to the best advantage of your jurisdiction and for you. Thank you. Okay. Brother Uza. Can we all stand?
Let us pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, as we come to Thee today, we thank Thee for the opportunity we have to assemble as men and as Masons to discuss things that we feel are important for our cause. Lord, we ask You'll bless us now in this deliberations, in this workshop, and the workshops that will follow today. May Thy name be honored and glorified. Help us to square our actions, let us square our virtues, and live upright lives as Thou would have us to live. Help us to know the truth that are given in the various religions of the world, and help us to understand who becomes the way that we can life. Lord, it's in His name we pray.
Amen.
Will start out, most of you know me, Robert L. Uzzle, book reviewer for the Philaxis Society, and I don't feel like I need to say much about my credentials, but I want to introduce my co-conductor of the debate from East Orange, New Jersey, Mustafa El-Amin, author of Al-Islam, Christianity, and Freemasonry. Mustafa will speak for about 30 minutes. We have about an hour and a half for this workshop. I will speak for about 30 minutes, and then we will allow time for questions.
In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. I bear witness openly there is no God but Allah, the one and only, the creator of the heavens and the earth. And I bear witness to Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, his last and universal name. I greet you all here, brothers, those of you who are nobles of the mystic shrine. I greet you, Master Masons. I greet you, all Archmasons. I greet the general audience here in the language of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. I'd first like to thank Brother Walker everybody in the audience at this time for extending to me an opportunity to participate in your 14th annual convention. And I'd also like, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for extending the invitation, and also like to mention that I read his book, Black Student Accomplished, since the time I've written my book. And I appreciate what he has written. I appreciate his struggle. I appreciate the struggle of Prince Hall. And I appreciate the efforts of black folks here and black folks in America who have strove very hard to establish ourselves as a people. I appreciate that the information in this book was very helpful. Perhaps if I had had that book prior to the time of writing this, I perhaps would have included some additional information. But I'd like to mention that my intent in writing the book was not to attack Prince Hall Masonry. I was dealing with concepts, ideologies, philosophy. I'd also like to thank Brother Ugly here for his book review that he's done, an extensive book review, which I really appreciate. And I've learned quite a few things from his book review. I thank him.
Could you project a little louder, please?
Okay.
Thanks.
For participating in this workshop with me also, or allowing me to participate in the workshop with him. So from that point, I'd like to move on and tell you a little something about why I wrote the book. I'm a Muslim, as you know, and as a Muslim, we have an obligation. We have an obligation to propagate truth. We have an obligation to reach out to our fellow brothers and sisters with what we see as truth and what we see as maybe helpful for our brothers and sisters. We are required as Muslims to seek knowledge from cradle to grave. Our prophet is the prophet of Islam, who was born in Mecca approximately 1,400 years ago and died in Medina, the one to whom the Holy Quran was revealed. I want to make that especially clear because I know there's been much propaganda here in this society over the years, over 50 years approximately, where perhaps there might have been some misconceptions about who the prophet of Islam is, and also about the teachings of Islam. Islam teaches a universal brotherhood of all men, black, white, red, brown, regardless of your color, regardless of your national origin, regardless of your persuasion. Islam teaches that. That is the base of Islam, a universal brotherhood. Therefore, when a Muslim really understands his religion, he comes into a universal purpose, a universal aim. He does not discriminate on the basis of color. I'm going to emphasize that. Anyone can become a Muslim. It's not just for whites. It's not just for blacks. It's not just for Arabs. Any human being. Let me give you a few terms. Islam is defined as peace and submission. Islam is defined as peace and submission. God tells us in the Quran that he established his religion. It is called Deen al-Fitra, the religion of the origin, which means that it is the religion of the nature. It is the nature in man to submit, whether it's willingly or unwillingly. There are certain involuntary actions within our body which have to submit to the will established by God. And that brings us into being a Muslim. A Muslim speaks to the nature. It doesn't necessarily, generally speak, it speaks to the nature of man to submit. A Muslim is one who submits to the will of the Creator, what he has established in his creation, to submit. That's what Muslim means, one who submits. It is a nature, so it's not something foreign from us. So if I was to say the sun is a Muslim, the stars are Muslim, we're all here are Muslims, it means that we obey the rules, the regulations of God, willingly or unwillingly. There are certain things we must obey and submit to, generally speaking. Now, once one accepts Islam, becomes conscious of that, then we move to another level. Let me just give you the basic belief and principles of Islam. Now, again, this is on my book, Our Islam, Christianity, and Freemason, and this is in the book, okay, what I'm saying. Islam is based on 5 fundamental principles. The first is belief in the one creator, Allah. And the Quran cites it, regardless of what name you call him, he is the creator, that divine power, that divine force. So belief in Allah and that Muhammad is his messenger. That Prophet Muhammad is his messenger. The second pillar or principle is prayer. The third one is charity. The fourth one is fasting during the holy month of Ramadan. And the fifth one is making pilgrimage or Hajj to Mecca if one can financially do so and if one's health will allow him to do so. These are the basis of the religion. I have an illustration here. I'm not the best artist, so I tried to get a young man to draw something for me, but this attempt, when we say Islam is based on 5 pillars, it's something very important that I must mention here. This is the essential pillar, the belief in the one God, which means then that if one neglects these other pillars, that the tent does not necessarily fall. It becomes narrow, it falls in, but it doesn't fall out or fall down. So that is what upholds it. And I'm sure many of you here are Christians and have read the Bible, and I'd just like to draw a quick analogy. When it says that David reached in the water and pulled out 5 smooth stones. But he only used 1 stone to slay Goliath. And we can draw a parallel to see that as representing the belief in the one creator. The belief in the one creator dispels all disunity. It dispels all myths, all confusion. The belief in the one God. Now, we may call them different names, etc. But us as religious people, God-conscious people, can unite on that basis. What we call in Islam, taqwa. Taqwa. And the oneness is tawheed. Tawheed means oneness, but not a singular oneness. Not a single like this, but a wholeness. It speaks to the wholeness of God, the wholeness of humanity, the wholeness of the universe. So on that oneness, we can unite. So it's tawheed. So if those pillars, if those other principles are neglected, then that will fall. The oneness of God. So anytime you hear anything, know anything about a Muslim, those are the fundamental pillars. And if you hear anything else is what Muslims believe, that may be something else added to it. That may be something else clicked off. And we all have a right to analyze and review and even develop schools of thought. But they have to go back to the foundation, which I know you men are definitely aware of that. We have articles of faith. I'm going to move fast because I want to address Freemason. 5, we have approximately 6 articles of faith. The articles of faith are the belief in the oneness of God, the belief in his angels, the belief in all his books, the belief in all the prophets. Muslims have to accept all the prophets from Adam to Muhammad. But we must accept. We cannot exclude any of them. So if a Muslim debates with a Christian, we automatically start off accepting him as a servant, a righteous servant and prophet of God, who came with a revelation and who was a sign of the word himself. So we must accept that. The next pillar, I said the angel, well, we have to have belief in the angel. We have belief in the day of judgment, meaning that we have to pay up for what we do in this life. If we live a good life, inshallah, which means if it pleases Allah, we'll receive paradise. If we don't, then the other extreme. And we believe in divine ordinance, predestination by God. We believe that we have a limited free will, but there are certain things that are already written. The pen has written and the ink has dried on some things, but we do have a limited free will. So that is the basis. Now our book,
Excuse me, sir, one more.
did I run them?
Yeah, one more. You gave us 5.
Oh, I gave you 5. There's 6. I said the hereafter.
Oh, the year after, okay, I didn't hear that.
Yes. I said we have to pay up for what we do here.
All right.
Judgment.
You use that with judgment.
Okay. Okay. Our working tool, so to speak, of any Muslim, and I'm trying to clear up any misconception that anyone may have, and believe me, the media has put it out. I, to some extent, was responsible as being a part of an organization which called itself Islam, but it propagated something that was not Islam. It had good moral teachings, but as it relates to the pure teachings of Islam, it was not. I was once a part of the Nation of Islam, now no longer exists really in its fullness. And we propagated that God was a man. We propagated that the religion was for blacks, but it was reactionary. It was logic to it, but it wasn't pure Islam. And I don't want anyone to think that it was pure Islam, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm being ungrateful for the great works of the Nation of Islam and the works of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Well, I appreciate that work. It was necessary to an extent because it was reactionary. The white man told us we was weak. The white man told us we was inferior. We was inferior. He told us that we was the descendants of Ham and we should always be as servants to them. So in response to that, we have many reactionary groups, but the Nation of Islam happened to have been one. It said the black man is God. You are superior. He said, you're the Muslim. You're the God. And the white man is the devil. In fact, he doesn't have as much knowledge as you. That's what they said. They said, we don't have the same brain. So he reversed it and said, he don't have the knowledge that you have. We raised him up out of the caves and hillsides of Europe like Moses rose the serpent up in the wilderness. And we only gave him 33 degrees. Now, I'm not slighting you. I'm telling you what was said. We only gave him 33 degrees. That's only a degree above freezing. So he ain't got nothing. But this was the teacher. The black man got 360 degrees. He's the fowler. He's the mason. Mason was they defined it at that time, was my son, Muslim son. Now we know that Freemasonry has various meanings, but I like to trace it and read it from my readings that it comes from Egypt, the word P-H-R-E, free, and master. Free meaning fire, light, master meaning child, sons of light. Ma, the way he broke it down, son, or was my son. So Mason was my son. We taught the Caucasian, we ran them across the sands, and it went into that whole history. But it was reactionary. And I'm bringing that out to say that there were some things that was called Islam, it had some of the Islamic concepts, but on certain issues it was far away from Islam. For Islam, it is shirk to associate a man with God. And we were taught that God appeared in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, a traveler from the east, a silk peddler. And he gave us a lot of mysteries, but to a great extent, he didn't unlock the mysteries. And as you know, signs and symbols can lead you right, or they can lead you astray. So in a lot of ways, we were led astray in relation to pure Islam. But I'm not taking away from any of the social reform of the Nation of Islam, any of the benefits that it contributed to us as a people, and that it contributed to me as a young man, and has contributed to society. That is there, the foundation has been laid. And that's why I want to make certain points on Islam, pure Islam. Our book is the Quran, and our example is Muhammad. It is quoted in the Hadith. Hadith is written before to what the Prophet Muhammad of Arabia 1400 years ago said. And he said, I leave with you two things. I leave you the Quran and my Sunnah. He who sticks to that will never go astray. I'm going to draw another analogy. The emblem, if I'm using the wrong term, because I know emblem, symbol, sign may vary, of the Masons is the compass and the square. Two basic working groups, but very essential. The square, and I'm going to try to go a little above or beneath the surface, is an instrument that's used for measuring earthly things. It's a flat earthly material thing. So it has been used as a symbol to represent the material nature, the material man. And that is why, if I'm correct, and I believe I am, when the candidate enters the lodge, he finds the point of the compass under the square, meaning he has not yet taken control of his material nature yet. Well, his material nature dominates his spiritual nature, right? He's still a material person. He's still in the dark, and he's placed in the north. Well, what I'm trying to draw an analogy is our working tool is the Quran and the Sunnah, and the working tools of the Mason as the compass and the square, which representing the same thing in a sense. Now, if the square, we will agree that the square is a tool for material things, and the compass could represent spiritual things, because we use the compass And it alludes to perhaps the saints, the spiritual plane. So when we unite these, we have the material and the spiritual. But the progression is the points of the compass is under the square. So as he moves on to the next degree, as you know, the one part is raised. Then when he finally becomes a master, the spiritual is over the material. So our aim in life is to travel to get spiritual discipline and spiritual insight. Now, the Quran was revealed from on high. It was revealed from God with high moral principles. So we can see that as the spiritual. And we're taught in Islam that the angel Gabriel, came to Muhammad. He used to go in the cave Hira and reflect on the condition of his people. And one day, the angel Gabriel came to him, and he whipped him. He said, read, that I cannot be unless. Whipped him again, read, not be unless. He said, read in the name of thy Lord, who created man from a clot of congealed blood. Read in the name of thy Lord, who was most bountiful, who taught man by the use of the pen that which he knew not. So what I'm showing is this is the spiritual. The Quran can symbolically looked at as the spiritual or the compass. Now here's a material man, Muhammad, receiving the revelation. We believe he is the living example of the Quran. He is the model human being. He is that model who actually lived out the word of the Quran, and he stuck to his human nature. We don't believe man is born in sin. We believe that he is born with a good nature, but he deviates from that nature. But we believe that Muhammad stuck to that nature. So he was an expression of the word. So we have material coming together with the spiritual. Muslims are taught not to be extreme, that we have to have that balance of material and the spiritual. So our working tool is the Quran and the Sunnah. Anything other than that is either philosophy or something that is built on it. But if you talk to a Muslim or you know a Muslim, any Muslim, the Quran and the Sunnah, the example. Sunnah is pathway, the example of Prophet Muhammad of 1,400 years ago. Okay. Islam teaches us that regardless of whether you're Muslim, Christian, or Jew, if you live an upright life, you will receive heaven, paradise, etc. So again, when a Muslim understands his religion, he comes into a universal vision. He must respect all religions. And if we go back to history a bit, we find there in Jerusalem that all three sacred monuments that the Mosque of Omar for the Muslims, I believe it's, I'm not sure, it's the Wailing Wall or what they call it for the Jews, and you have the temple. You have the temple, and I know there's something else there for the Christians, but all three religions live in harmony there. So I'm going to move on from there and try to move into moving fast. I know time flies, especially when you're having a good time.
Right on.
A few things on what the Quran says about Jesus and Muhammad to bring us into Christianity. The Quran says, on Jesus and Christianity, the Quran says Jesus was a righteous prophet. It reads in Surah 6, chapter 6, ayah 85. And Zechariah and Jesus and John and Jesus and Elijah are in the ranks of the righteous. And then it says in another surah, nearest among them, nearest to the believers, nearest to the Muslims, you will, in love, will thou find are those who say they are Christians. Now it mentions the fact that they study and they learn, and that when the word of God is recited to them, some tears fall from them. So it draws that closeness to us. So a Muslim really cannot just attack Christians, attack this, attack that. That's not the way we do it. In fact, we have instruction. It says, speak to them in the best of language. And it illustrates to us, but even when Moses went to speak to Pharaoh, he was a little hesitant anyway. But when he went to speak to Pharaoh, it said, show him respect for the position that he holds. Don't just come out lambert. move into Christianity a little bit here. A few concepts in Christianity which I'd like to bring out. The Bible says, let there be light. Opening of the book. In the beginning there was darkness on the face of the earth. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. Now we understand that to mean that God wanted the minds of men to be lit with knowledge, education, science. That he did not want us to grope in the dark. He did not want us to be ignorant and stupefied. He wanted us to be wise creatures because he said we was the vicegerent. How are you going to be the vicegerent? And that's what the Quran used, the vicegerent. I think the Bible used crown of creation, the ruler in the earth. Now, how can we rule without knowledge? So let there be light. He did not want us to walk in ignorance and in darkness. So I think that it behooves the church, it behooves the Christians, it behooves all men to walk in the light, to seek knowledge, to travel for understanding. You see? So, again, I felt compelled after having received some light to share the light with my brother who gropes in the dark. When I read the book of the Good Samaritan, I said, I want to be like that man. When I read the history of Moses, I said, I want to be like that man. And when I looked at Muhammad, I said, and that's my example, I got to strive to be like that man. Those men did not take the light and hide it under a bushel basket. When we read the history, when we look at it, they did not take the light and hide it under a bushel basket. They had an obligation, a responsibility from God to do so. Now, in the Bible, we find where Jesus told his disciples, and let me mention this on secrecy. There are conditions in Islam from which secrecy is condoned. But the effort, the existence of the secrecy must be for the advancement of good. That has to be the purpose, the sole purpose, not just for secrecy's sake, but for the advancement of good. And Muhammad, when he started out with his mission, for approximately 3 years, they had to practice it in secrecy because of the hostility from the Quraysh tribe and the other pagans of that day who wanted to crush out the light. But eventually a revelation came to him and said, arise and proclaim the message openly. And they seem to have received more hostility. At that point, more persecution. But it didn't say, go into the ground or go underground. So if the Bible says, let there be light, we are saying that the Christians, the reverends, those who are in leadership positions, should study and share with the people and make sure that they come into light and understand. And I have an obligation as a Muslim. The Prophet tells us it is best to teach knowledge 1 hour of the day, of the night, than it is to pray all night long. And it says, a true Muslim is one who desires for his brother what he desires for himself. And I think Jesus said you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. Something to that effect. So I think, and I do know from my own experience, my limited experience on this earth, that knowledge lives by exchange. And I keep referring to the Quran. I know some of you are familiar with the Quran. I don't want to stick strictly with the Quran because I may isolate something. So I'll try to jump back and forth, okay, from the Bible to the Quran. But the Quran tells us that we have to travel through the land and see what was the fate of those who came before us. And he said that God made us tribes and communities. Listen to this. Tribes and communities that we may know one another and not despise one another. So if there's a Christian, there's a Jew, there's a Mason, there's a Shriner, whatever field you're in, they made us tribes so that those that travel to Europe, they get a different experience from Europe. Those that travel into Syria and Ethiopia, they got a different experience. Those who went all block, they got a different experience, so they got different knowledge. So when we come together, we can work towards one aim. You bring what you learn. You bring what we learn. All of us come together like men coming together to build the building. So we bring all our skills together to erect a better society for ourselves and for our children, for our family, for the total existence of man. This is what Islam teaches. Now, I know I'm going beyond the time. I like to mention the cross. The cross, there's several crosses, but the most ones I see anyway in the country is this cross. Now the cross, if we look at points in the four cardinal directions, north, east, south, west. So we can look at it as a universal sign, a sign of universality. And really it's 360 degrees because we got four 90-degree angles. So again, it's speaking to the circumference of the earth. Now the Bible tells us that a man was crucified on the cross. The Quran tells us it was made to appear that way, but he was not crucified. And it says he represented the Word. So it tells me that the Word was crucified. And in crucifying, an effort was made to crucify the Word throughout the world. To take the Word of God and crucify it so it would not be known throughout the world. Now I can bring it to another point and talk about us as African American people who have been crucified here in this land and in the world. That we came from great civilization. We was a king. Excuse me. No. We were kings and rulers in Africa. You trace your order back to Egypt and further, I'm sure. But we stopped in Egypt, which we agree was the cradle of the mysteries, the cradle of civilization, where these great men had the science of physics, chemistry, physiology, psychology, and in the mystery systems there, they took the initiates from the first degree there, and they brought them on up. But the purpose of the mystery system was to teach monotheism, the oneness of God, immortality of the soul, and to teach the science of human nature. And we have there the Sphinx, and we have the pyramid. I guess from here I'll just try to go straight on some masonry. I'm calling it masonry. I believe that the wisdom of God is for all men. And I think people have called it by different names. The Quran tells us that Allah, God, taught Adam. He put him before the angels. And he said, when I have duly proportioned my man, then you submit to me. The Bible says that the man was made a little below the angels. The Quran tells us he was eventually evolved and became greater than the angels. And we understand angels, different angels, as forces in nature that we necessarily can't touch or whatever. But they're forces in nature. Lightning, thunder, sound. And as I start out of my book, speaking of man's struggle for truth, that was the title, right, fellow? Man's struggle for truth. And it shows how man at one time feared the lightning, feared the thunder, feared the hell. You see? He was afraid. And the Bible says, I heard God's footsteps walking in the garden, and he became afraid and he threw his little apron on. But nevertheless, man grew. At that point, he was below the angels. Then he grew to master the angels. So now we can, the lightning, the wind, the air, we sail ships. They built the pyramids understanding the necessary angles with the sun, understand the mathematics and everything and all the forces, so that we eventually grew over it. And we look at the word God. In Islam, we don't necessarily use the word God because he refers to the spell dog. The Quran tells us that man is created in the best of mold on a high plane, but when he deviates, he can fall to a low plane. So you can come from little g, God, ruler, and if you don't act right or you mess up, you become basically a dog on a low level, immoral, ignorant, lustful creature, whatever. But we evolve or you can fall. Nevertheless, I believe it's the pyramid that I wanted. Well, I was on the cross, so let me kind of. I'm going to skip. I'm trying to skip and show some points. My brother spoke of a point within a circle. Now, I'm not going to quote it directly, but it's my understanding that the point in the circle may represent an individual brother who has circumscribed his passion. But if we look at a circle, will see that in the center, that the center is equal distance from its circumference all the way around. And we can look at that as representing man in the center of the universe, having an equal relationship to God who encompasses everything. We have a same relationship to God as the white man. We have the same relationship to God as the Asian. We have the same relationship to God as any man on this earth. All men have an equal relationship to God. That's one example, if we look at the point within a circle. There in Mecca, we have a square within a circle, but I'll get to that. I don't want to, I know I'm deviating. Okay, let me get back to the cross. So we said that the cross pointed in all four directions. And it's really 360 degrees. And I said that it represented, they say they crucified a man. But this man, when they crucified him like a cross. If we stand out, we're a cross. We get 360 degrees, actually, like this, and we form a cross. They have the other cross, the tar, which has the round circle on it, which represents life. The one without it represents death, and that goes back into Eden. So we have one man forming a cross, then we have the wooden cross, or whatever cross they use. So you have two crosses. So there was some double crossing going on. I would have to say that there was definitely some double crossing going on. So it said they put this man on this cross. And if we agree that he represented the word, or he represented something made of more than flesh, that was killed in all four directions. It was crucified. Now what happened to him? They condemned him without any real reason. Pilate, I don't think, really didn't want to have anything to do with it. But they put the crown on his head. I think they speared his heart, and they gave him some aceta, some venom, in his throat. Now, if we study history, we see mythology has connection. And we know that the ancient Egyptians were wise, and they had their belief, their mystery systems. And the legend of Hiram Abiff, we find where he was also hit in his left breast by the rubber. We also find that he was hit in his throat. Now, him being hit in the throat is cutting off the wind. Not only that, it represents the voice, being able to speak. He was cut off from articulate expression. Okay, not that he couldn't speak, but the articulate expression, because he was hit in the head. So what was in the head could not be expressed. So we find the same points on Jesus. And in my book, I drew an analogy between the Egyptian mystery system that we talk about, Osiris also, who was killed by Typhoon, his brother. At a great feast, they plotted to get the kingdom. And they had a chest, which really fit Osiris. But the game was, whoever can fit this chest could keep the chest. It was a gold chest or whatever. Or it was a valuable chest. And I say that because I know brothers get into specifics, what gold may mean, this may mean, actually know the number of workmen at Solomon's temple and what kind of material we use. Okay, thank you. I'm not good with this. Can anybody hear me anyway? Okay, I'm not good with this.
That'll pick it up.
So Osiris, so they plotted, and Osiris fit in the box, and they closed it, nailed it down, sent him down the river. I believe ISIS, well, he got caught up in a tree at a king's place. ISIS finally found him, got him back. Nevertheless, at some point, he was cut up in 14 pieces, scattered throughout the land. And she could find everything but that phallus, right? That penis, right? Everything but that. And that was a symbol of the procreation of man. Not that they worship the penis itself. I think the Greeks got into that. But that generative force, that life-giving force. So she searched and she couldn't find anything but that. But eventually she came up with a substitute. Am I right? They got together, they came up with a substitute. Now, when the master mason's word was lost at the building of the temple, they had to come up with a substitute. I'm just drawing an analogy across the board. They had to come up with a substitute until future time. So when she came up with this substitute, she produced a child. And his name was Horus. Now, when we think of God the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, Let's look at Horus. Well, we can look at Isis, Osiris, and Horus. But let's go a little further. Let's look at Horus, who then became the ruler, because Osiris, he died and became the ruler, I believe, in the underworld, but he never came back to this world, so to speak. So, when we look at, you have Horus, the young one, which is at dawn, the sun. And then you have Horus, the youth, who's at midday. Then you have Horus, the elder. You see? God, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Now, at those 3 points, Muslims cannot pray. We try to stay away from that kind of thing. We cannot pray at dawn, the actual rise. We have what we call Fajr prayer, that's morning prayer, but it's after. We cannot pray when the sun is at its peak. And Hiram was killed when it was at its peak, at noontime. Dangerous time. And then as it's setting, we have what we call migrant prayer. That's the setting prayer as it sets in the west. So we pray, but we don't set at its setting point. So what am I saying here in relationship to Christianity? I'm saying that the birth, the life and death and resurrection of Jesus as is presented in the Bible has some relationship to the mythology of ancient Egypt, Greece, and all the others. And it may not have really happened. It might not have happened. Jesus might not have been born that way, in that immaculate way. It might have been trying to show us something. Now, I believe, and I've been taught, that mythology is of no value if you can't tie it into the day, into your life. It's only academics, just something to talk about. But if you can't apply it to your everyday life, it don't mean nothing. Now, for us, if we look at the 3 points, God, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, man is made up as a truant being. We don't accept the Trinity of God. We accept the oneness of God. And we think that the Trinity actually alludes to man. Body, soul, spirit, physical, mental, spiritual. Right? Now, if man is a Trinity, and when we look at man as a Trinity, then we can better understand that Christian ideal of maybe a man being crucified on the cross. Let me elaborate. You have the triangle, which they tell me was an early sign of the deity. This is what I'm told in some of my reading. And I'm sure you gentlemen may correct me if I'm wrong. Because there's no breaks. It's like the circle, really. You can just go, go right there. Well, a circle is here. But it was a sign of deity. They used it as a sign of deity, but it really alluded to the man, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. Now, when the apprentice enters the lodge, his working tools, I believe it's correct. I'll leave that out. His working tools are the 24-inch gauge, and I believe the common gallon. Now, this gauge is really a material instrument for material surface. Now, when he advances to fellow craft, the gauge has actually been moved up some. It shows some growth. The whole thing, it makes me understand, is a progressive science for man to master himself, master his passions, to come into some understanding. And he receives this through symbols. He receives it through instructions and initiation. But now this gauge has moved, this 24-inch gauge. Now, if you move it up and form a right angle triangle of 90 degrees, you see movement from a horizontal level, which anything on a horizontal level is either sit, dead, sleep, or resting. Now, if it moves up from this horizontal level, and it forms this perpendicular to the square, you see some movement now, some growth from a physical man who may have been in darkness, who could not have controlled his passion, who did not have the understanding of the sciences. Now he comes in, after being placed in the northeast corner, to let us know, brother, which way are you going to travel? Are you going to stay in darkness, where we began, or are you going to travel eastward into the light? As a point, Muslims don't travel eastward. They don't pray eastward. Our orientation towards prayer is to our Qibla, which is for orientation, is to the Kaaba. It doesn't necessarily mean that, even though it's in the east, it says turn from wherever you are and in that direction, to the sacred house, the Kaaba. So it'd be northeast, southeast, wherever you are, you turn towards the Kaaba. So we don't necessarily travel or look eastward, per se. And we know that in ancient times there were those who worshiped the sun because of its great energies, its great rays, and its greatness. And it rose in the east to govern and rule the heavens, as that brother that sits in the east there in the lodge, govern and rule the lodge, and it sets in the west, and it's set in the west. So they look to the east for light, for warmth, for understanding, the ancient sun worship. Now we know today that it moves up. You look to the east, and we see there the Great Pyramid. We see the Sphinx, the east. We see that this is where mathematics, science comes from the east. So I want to show you this here. I tried this. Now if we look there to the east, we're still on the same point as I was talking about Christianity, but I'm really kind of mixing it because, again, the cross is the 4 points, and it also is 360 degrees, really. And it also, from my understanding, may allude, well, the 4 would allude to the 4 basic elements of the universe. Now, you see at the base of, now, the ancient Egyptians, the Africans, were profound, very wise. In fact, they were so wise that the men of today are baffled by the pyramids. But because of their racism, many of the archaeologists, many of the explorers who went into Egypt, and this is why I say, brothers, all respect due to Prince Hall and the great efforts that were made, I say that we should stop seeking legitimization, authority, approval, and acceptance from the white man to practice the ancient wisdom. We don't need his approval to practice the ancient wisdom. If in fact, if you will agree that the sciences is there in Africa, and we are descendants from Africa, then we have, by inheritance, a right to the knowledge. We don't need approval from England or America. And this in my book, I question, not disrespecting Prince Hall, I question what would make a black man think that the white man who enslaved us, who denied us our rights as a human being, who has lied on us for years, would give us some damn grand secret. That was my question. And during that point, 1775, when he was initiated, my studies of Prince Hall, and when he set up his lodge in 1787, when he got the charter, petitioned for it in 84-3, he got the charter and he set up African Lodge number 459. I asked at that point if slavery was at its peak here and in England, and there was hostility between the Americans and the English. Why? Just ask the question, why would England grant a man from Barbados or grant black men who was in slavery? Why would he grant them a charter? What was the purpose? It wasn't for any altruistic reason. They don't want to accept no universal brotherhood. If Freemasonry represents a universal brotherhood, and you tell me that there's circles on the column Boaz and Jason, which may allude to the universal teachings of Masonry, they haven't accepted the universal teachings of Masonry. If they would have freed us. They would have given us the knowledge. We would not have to be asking them for what we've been asking them for. Now, at that time, it was the peak of slavery. Why would England give it to them? And I submit to you, it was not for altruistic reasons. It was the hostility between America and the whites, and to pinch the nerve of the whites here in America. We say, we'll give your slaves something that we know you don't want them to have, and to keep that fight going on and on and on. And the same thing happened. I'm not questioning the Ayatollah Khomeini and what the intentions were when they freed the blacks and the women. Some said it was a strategy to divide the blacks and the white in this country. I don't necessarily agree with that, but you use that kind of trickery. England had promised if their blacks would fight in the wars, perhaps they would get freedom. America didn't want the blacks at that time to fight in the wars because they feared with the weapons and with the military understanding that they would cause an upheaval in the land. It was the same reason why Lincoln freed the slaves. He didn't love us. He didn't give a damn about us. But between the battle between the North and the South, he had to break the backbone of the South. So he freed the blacks to break their backbone. He didn't give a damn. It's the same reason. So I submit to you, brothers, very sincere, very humble. Let us stop spending time, money, efforts, research, as you pointed out in your great litigation, where the ancient Egyptian Arabic order of the shrines fought because the ancient Arabic order of the nobles and the mystic shrines, the whites, didn't want them to use a title or whatever that whole. Stop using all that and get acceptance among your own people. Most of the people in the community don't know what the Masons are doing. I'm sorry. I don't know what they're doing. I see at certain parades, I know they contribute, and a few, they contribute, and perhaps a lot of things, but as a mass movement for the liberation of our people, I say no, I don't see it. And if you have this great wisdom, and I doubt if England gave it to you, because that would have freed you. So we don't need to go to them. And if we wasn't going to go to Africa, we already had the secrets because he was initiated. Just practice what is there. That's not to say I agree with the secrets, because I do believe that, like a seed placed in the ground, if it doesn't eventually come to the light, then it will die. But it needs to feed on the air of freedom and the light of prosperity. Good enough? What's my time?
It's gone way over.
Yeah, you used up the reverend's time.
Would you very briefly, Mustafa, explain your objections to shrine-dom, and then let me take it from there?
Okay. As a Muslim, I say we respect all religions and we respect all human beings. As Muslims, we have certain objections to the shrine house. My understanding, it is called the playhouse of Masonry. There's different accounts of when and how it was established. Some say with Caliph Ali, cousin of Prophet Muhammad. I haven't read that in any of my Islamic literature. Or any of the scholars I haven't seen where that's the case. Now we take exception with certain things that we found in the ritual. And that is some of, I guess, the game plan. Not only of crossing the sands, that's your business, but we hold the black stone and emblems there sacred. I've read in the ritual, I picked up a couple of them, one from New York, one from Chicago, one here from Washington, to verify certain things. And in the ritual, it is a statement which says, who but Muhammad mingled his religion with his quarries, his women, and said, this is indeed happiness, paradise. Now, Muhammad, we hold very dear to ourselves. As a human being like ourselves, a common man who was not a part of any secret societies, he was not a well-educated man, but it showed us the power of God to take that which was last and make it first. So we have a problem, we have some concerns about the shrine. The other thing is this, that if we see the shrine is with the Eastern dress, the fez, the emblem, the Arabic writings, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, and we know that at the shrine degree, the Bible and the Quran is there, and you swear on the Quran that there's certain things, if you reveal certain things will happen. When people see that, the common people, and it's been said to me, oh, they're Muslims. They're Muslims. What we're saying is deceiving and it's a misrepresentation because you're presenting yourself as something that you're not. I read in the secret works, which I got here from Washington, it said that the shrines present themselves as Muhammad or something like that, but the ostensible purpose, or the secret purpose, is to advocate the Christian religion. Now, it's double talk, and it appears to be deception. Now, I'm telling you what I've done. It's double talk, and it seems to be deception. And we have a problem with people presenting themselves or giving an image, or intentionally or unintentionally. So we just bring it to your mind of something that you're not. Example, in New York, Mecca Temple. A knowledgeable Muslim person say, oh, our place is a mosque. Mecca Temple must not be a mosque. But on 33rd, between 33rd and 34th Street and Youth Salad Avenue and Ohio, you have Holy Quran Mosque. Now, if I decide I want to go in there and make prayer, and if I don't have the word for entrance, but in entering the mosque, you don't have to go through that. But Mecca, Memphis, or whatever it is, I can't come there and pray. So it's deceiving, it's deception. So it appears to be something that is not. And we're about trying to present that right image. As I started out, the Nation of Islam gave a wrong image of Islam. We addressed that. We're trying to address that. I'm just bringing it to your conscience that there are certain things that maybe need to be looked at. And I'm going to say this in quote. During the time, the Caucasian people, the Christians from Europe, during the time of the Crusades, and the great battles that were fought, and they lost many lives, that there was great resentment and animosity between the Muslims, so they call them infidels. So, to some extent, maybe I can understand them making some mark. Maybe. Okay? The hostility. But when we as African American people, descendants from Africa, and know that Islam has had a great impact on Africa, and perhaps many of us were descendants of Africa, and we can get into who exploited Africa and all that, but the fact remains that many of us are descendants from Africa, and I don't happen not to believe that, but there are some people who say that, so I'll leave it at that. But after being descendants of Africa, that we should hold precious these things about the religion. And I can understand the Caucasian doing that, maybe. But from the time of the Crusades and all that kind of stuff. But for example, if the rituals and if the shrine ritual had, for example, who but the blacks swung the highest in the trees. Now you get the same ritual that he has. If that is there, I would hope that you would try to modify that and say, well, hey, we got to change that. You know, that's talking about us. So the only thing I'm saying is, let us just look at it and let's not necessarily copy what they've done. Look at it and where there's modifications to be made. That's what I'm saying. As Muslims, we hold these things very sacred, and we just ask that maybe you just look at that and consider it. And one other point, in order to cross the sands, the real sands, and to go worship at the real shrine of Islam, you have to be a Muslim. You have to declare the faith. That's the real thing. Now, when you go to your rituals, which is not the real thing, I'm not saying it's a mockery, but it's an acting of the real thing, I would question that. Because, from my understanding, one of the reasons you want the secret word and all of these things is so you can travel in distant lands. But if you can't truly travel to that distant land, and the shriners say it's Islamic land, you have to question that. Because that means you don't have the real thing. You can't really go there. Whereas a Muslim can really, unless you're making mock, unless you're playing. I'm crossing the sand to worship at the shrine. What shrine? The shrine of Islam. I pulled the cord, I wrote the hum, all that kind of thing. Now I know that many of you respect those sacred symbols, but just think about it. Can you really do it? And all we ask is just to look at it. I'm not going to go on. I respect you, gentlemen. I thank you, gentlemen, for your time, your attention, and we love each other as brothers and sisters. We have the same fight. We have the same struggle. And we have to prepare ourselves and pass the knowledge on to the young ones. I'm a young man, 29 years old. We have to pass it on to the young brothers and sisters that need it. And they may not necessarily want to come into the law. They may want to share with another brother without worrying about the oath of secrecy. Now, the oath may be symbolic, but it's still a hindrance. And if it is Freemasonry, if it is free to erect a spiritual structure, to lay those perfect stones, to bring it from a rough asher to a perfect asher, if it's free to do that, then let it be free. Don't put the restraints. Let us, as a people, strive forward and advance. And thank you very much, Brother Abu, and I really appreciate it. Thank
you. While you're standing there, you can get a little stretch so you want.
There you go. There you got it. You must have been born in Arkansas.
I'm not going to be able to
Okay.
use too much time because most of it's been taken up, but I want to start by saying this.
Please forgive me.
You're forgiven. The book Al-Islam, Christianity, and Freemasonry by Mustafa El-Amin is worth reading. And it is, he has copies here available.
We have some.
If you didn't purchase one last night, I strongly urge you to purchase one today because it's something that should be on a must on the reading list of every Mason. I firmly believe that. I don't agree with everything it says, but I recommend it very highly. This right here is my 29-page book review of this. In the fourth quarter of the Flaxus magazine, 1986, part 1 of my book review appeared in the current issue, the first for 87. The second part appeared in the next issue, which will be out in June. The third part will appear, and if you have a chance to read both the book and the review, there will be a lot said. You'll be able to learn a lot from this. I want to deal with a number of things here, and just briefly and in passing. The religion of Islam is one of the great religions of the world, just as is Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and Buddhism, and many others. Mustafa's already told you about the origin of it. I want to speak just briefly on the beginning of Islam in America, which is what we should be primarily concerned about today, about Islam in this country. As far as we know, the first American convert to Islam was a Methodist minister named Reverend Norman. In the 1870s, he went to Turkey as a missionary, and instead of converting the Turks to Christianity, he converted to Islam. This was a white man, and about a decade later, another white American named Alexander Russell Webb became a Muslim, and he did a lot to advance the cause of Islam in America. He took the name Muhammad Webb. In 1893, he gave 2 lectures on Islam at the World's Parliament of Religions that met at the World's Fair in Chicago, World's Columbian Exposition. And there was a lot of Arabs, a lot of Muslims, and other people that were present from all over the world that were at this fair. And according to the legend, it was on June the 1st, 1893, at Apollo Hall on State Street in Chicago, that John G. Jones and 13 other black Masons received the degree of the Mystic Shrine from an Arab named Rohfelt Pasha. Now, as a member of the Imperial Historical Committee of the Mystic Shrine, I can tell you we've not been able to prove or disprove whether Rohfelt Pasha ever lived. There's a lot of problems with that story. Of course, it was in 1872 that the ancient Arabic order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, the white organization, came into being, and our Prince Hall group goes back to 1893. But this was, like I say, one of these developments, but it was shortly after that there was various Islamic organizations started. But the first one that dealt specifically with the black community was the Moorish Science Temple that started in Newark, New Jersey in 1913, founded by Timothy Drew, who took the name of Noble Drew Ali. And Noble Drew Ali died in Chicago in 1929. And most of you read my article that appeared 2 years ago in the Falaxis magazine, The Moorish Science Temple, a Religion Influenced by Prince Hall Masonry, in which I documented pretty well the fact that Noble Drew Ali borrowed heavily from Masonry in organizing the Moorish Science Temple. Now, he died in 1929. A year later, W.D. Fard and Elijah Muhammad withdrew from the Moorish Science Temple and started the Nation of Islam as a splinter group. Of course, they developed into a much larger organization. And Elijah ruled the organization until 1975 when he died. At that point, his son, Wallace Muhammad, who later became Warith Deen Muhammad, took over the organization and changed much of the teaching, as Mustafa's already brought out, and did everything he could to bring it into conformity with Orthodox or Sunni Islam. In 1978, there was a split, and there was one group that didn't want to accept the new teachings. And today, Louis Farrakhan heads what's left of the Nation of Islam, and they still follow the original teachings of Elijah Muhammad. But as I have brought out before, and Brother Walks brought this out in his lecture yesterday, we are of the opinion that indirectly the present movement, what was called the American Muslim Mission, though they don't call it that anymore, is indebted for its very existence to Prince Hall Freemasonry. Indirectly, Prince Hall Masonry and Prince Hall Shrine gave rise to the Moorish Science Temple, which in turn gave birth to the Nation of Islam, and the evolving process goes on. But anyway, there's a lot that can be said. I want to mention regarding secrecy. Mustafa brought out there was secrecy in Islam during the early years due to hostility. And I want to say that Masonic secrecy is a carryover from an earlier period of history. many of those who are attacking Masonry today, bring up the issue of secrecy. Like I say, there was a time Masons had to go underground because of the hostile climate, and the secrecy is a remnant of that era. And many quote the passage from John 18:20, where Jesus answered him, "I spake openly to the world, I ever taught in the synagogue and in the temple, where the Jews always resort, and in secret have I said nothing." Yet no mention is ever made of Matthew 13:10-11. And the disciples came and said unto him, "Why speakest thou unto them in parables?" And he answered and said unto them, "Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given." And he alluded just briefly to the obligations and the penalties of the obligations. Of course, that is being called into question today. And of course, the penalties are symbolic. And regarding the matter of oath-taking, this is from a pamphlet, hopefully we're going to publish this pretty soon in Phalanxis, Freemasonry versus Christianity by Bishop Alvin Lee Baker. He said that regarding oath-taking, in the moral sense, if people object to this oath, they ought to object to the court oath, the oath the soldier takes, or the signature on a contract. All these are enforced by the full weight of the law, and if you break one of these things, see what happens. The penalty of the law will take effect. They're not archaic symbolic penalties such as ours, but they're of more weight in society than the symbolic archaic penalties that are used in the obligation that are given in a lodge. And of course, what he was saying a while ago regarding the shrine, I have some problems with that too, I must confess. And of course, the Phalanxis Society doesn't have authority over the Imperial Council. And our Deputy Imperial Potentate is here today, and hopefully, I don't know how much good some of this is going to do to that effect, but some of the stuff in the second section bothers me. I really don't like it. I enjoy the first section. I'm a ritualist, and I enjoy participating in much of the ritualistic work of the shrine, but some of the stuff, especially the kissing of the black stone, a lot of things like this, I would like to see left out, but I'm not the one with the authority over that. It's the saying that one white imperial potentate made many years ago, that if little boys can play cops and robbers, then Shriners can play Muslims and infidels. According to the viewpoint of most Muslims, that just doesn't hold water. And as Prince Hall Masons need to take this into consideration, and as I brought out in my book review, there's no organization that historically has been more committed to the cause of black liberation than the Prince Hall Masonic Fraternity. That begins with Prince Hall himself and the struggle he had in his day, and down through the years. Brother Walks pretty well documented that in Black Square and Compass, that there have been so many outstanding individuals who played such a important role as far as black uplift was concerned, who have been Prince Hall Masons and are still Prince Hall Masons today. And there's many other organizations, of course, that work for the same goal. And there are certain places, some Muslims who are members. We have in Detroit a man whom I understand is now disabled from a stroke. I've not met him, but our imperial chanter for the Quran is actually a Muslim and has made the pilgrimage to Mecca twice. The fact that he's, in the condition he's in, it's unfortunate that he couldn't be here. And Brother Brian Abrams told me he knows some Muslims in Chicago who are Masons, and it's unfortunate we don't have anybody here who's both a Muslim and a Mason.
Who did what?
It's unfortunate that we don't have anybody here who is a Mason and a Muslim both.
My past worshipful junior worshipful master, past worshipful master was a Muslim of the American Muslim Mission, and he is still practicing.
Okay, I'll respond to that.
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, I can? Okay.
Yeah.
A person may have in Islam, you do have your personal individual choice to do what you deem necessary in your life to a point. What I would say to that brother is I would point out to him what is in the Quran on secrecy, and I would point out to him also what his basic obligation is as a Muslim. My problem, what the problem come in at is not only the taking of the oath, but it's my understanding that the bond of Freemasonry exceeds all bonds. In other words, if my Muslim brother sits here, my Masonic brother sits here, where's the decision made?
Decision on what?
If an incident occurs, and he has to make a decision between me or his Masonic brother on whatever the act may be. We may be on equal moral level, we may be equally active in the community, but a decision may have to be made.
Do you remember the preface before you take the Masonic oath?
Yes, it does.
Are you overlooking that?
No, I'm not. But the fact of the matter is that he has a strong bond to his brother. Now I'm just trying to respond to it. If he has a strong bond, he has to come to the extent of his cable tow for his brother. Now in Islam, he has to do the same for his brother. It say that the community of Muslims are as one brother. Basically, I'm not quoting it exactly. Only thing I'm saying, it would seem difficult for him to have to make a decision between his Masonic brother and his Muslim brother on, say, a particular issue which may be.
I don't think it would ever come up.
Maybe not.
I might say this, that you're way out in, let me say something, Nathaniel Palmer and I don't know his Arabic name at this time. But you're way out in left field when you keep talking about secrecy.
Okay.
There are no secrets in the Masonic organization, no more than what's contained within you.
Okay, but there are.
They're private, yes, but didn't you read the book?
Yes, there has
Then
to
if
be.
it's put in print, the secret is lost.
Okay, but what is the?
It's obvious what he
You
knows.
can't read the secret.
No, understand what I'm saying. In Masonry, I guess the language of the oath is you will not reveal what has been revealed.
Yes, sir.
So there's certain tokens, passwords, etc. I understand those are your secrets. So
No. Did you read them? Did you read them?
Did you read them?
Yes,
So
sir.
then the
So
secret,
then
then
there's
you
no
didn't
more
read it.
secret.
Right.
Then
That's
there's
what we're
no more
trying to
secret.
tell you.
Okay.
If you can read a secret, I don't care
Okay.
if
Then
one
there's no more
man
secret.
wrote it and one man
Right.
read it, the
Right.
secret is lost.
Then there's no more secret.
So you're talking about a decision by my junior past master, the lodge that I belong to. He and I have a very good relationship. And there would never come a time when he must make a distinction between Islam and Freemasonry. Freemasonry is compatible with every religion in the world.
Okay.
That's my view.
Okay,
Right,
now-
every religion.
Now let me understand this. Now I want to make sure that I hear you clear.
All right,
That there is no secret to Freemasonry.
that's what I said. It's one secret, and you can't tell it.
Okay. If you say it's no secret, then Masonry is not a.
Let me stand up in case somebody didn't hear me. I said there are no secrets in Masonry except one, and I will tell you what it is, and you will see how it cannot be told. What does Freemasonry mean to you? That's the only secret there is.
Brother Payne.
Yes, the one point I want to make to the brothers is that there is a secret in Freemasonry, and that secret is between the brother and his God. That's the only
You
secret
can't
in
tell
Freemasonry.
that.
Well, okay. Let me ask you this. Then. If that is the only secret, then what I say or we say about the compass and the square, I mean, you can basically come out in the public and tell them about what the apron means.
Write it every week.
You can tell them about the compass and the square. You can tell them what the substitute word is without being on the 5 points of fellowship. Are you telling me?
You can buy it in the bookstore.
Did you read that?
No. Well, the masters of the
Buy it in the
people.
bookstore. Let me ask you a question.
Okay, the masters of the
We
people.
we can't all talk and
The masters of the people generally
Just a
think
moment.
Masonry is.
Wait a minute, bro. Wait.
Just a moment.
I'm sorry.
Let us understand. We can all sing in harmony and be understood and beautiful. But we cannot talk and everyone understand what is being said. We are here to learn and let's do it in a harmonious way.
Okay.
Brother Gibson.
You seem to be well versed on masonry, and I understand that you have never been a mason.
Absolutely, never have.
Where did you get your information?
Through research.
Does that sound like we're a secret society? If it was secret, you would not be able to find it.
Well, there are some secrets that have been broken. Understand, maybe it's intent. Okay, you're the Mason. If you say there's no secret, I have to accept your word. I can't argue with you and say that there is secret. If you say Masonry is not a secret society, there's no secret. I can present certain things that I've read and say they're mysteries. But if you say there's no secret in Masonry, I can't tell you that there is. Okay, if there's no secret, I did research. And I found it.
Let me say one other thing. As I told you last night, in your next book, don't quote men like Albert Pike. He was a 300-pound segregationist that lived in my hometown.
Okay, when I wrote my book, I was not
he
dealing
got
on.
that way after
I was
that.
not dealing on a race. I wasn't dealing on a race issue. I was dealing, like I say, with principles, concepts, and ideas. And Albert Pike, as racist as he was, and wherever he is, he probably still racist, discriminating against the devil. They say. So.
But what I'm saying,
No,
sir,
I hear you.
it's just like this book.
Right.
A lot of Scottish Rite Masons read this book, but they never read the opening statement of the author. Now, how in the world can you take a man that is against an organization and consider him an expert?
I understand.
It just can't be done. You can't take a non-Muslim
Right.
and proceed to tell you, a practicing Muslim, about your religion.
Okay. Does somebody have a question?
Someone at the back had a question. Yes.
Yes, I'm Brother Todd, Brooklyn, New York. It seems to me that we're trying to establish authenticity and identification going back as far as we can. And if I may use this analogy of the history of what we call Africa, going backwards. We know that the Europeans came in there, they did their thing. Before that, I think it was the Arabs, they did their thing. Then the Romans before that did their thing, and the Greeks before that. And it seemed like everything came out of Africa. And each of them got a piece of it and turned it for something that they wanted to use it for. Now we're going back trying to identify ourselves and establish authenticity on these different things that come up. And if we analyze it, just as I listen to both of you speak, we've gotten, if you want to put it in terms of masonry, we've gotten pieces of it down the line. But from what I gather, that masonry goes back even before Solomon, and in fact it has no beginning, no ending. But we have terminologies to express different things. Like even in the Muslim religion, the Africans are practicing a form of Muslim religion. I mean Islam before the Arabs got there. When they got there, they took it and turned it their way. And so when we look at the Islamic brothers today, especially the black ones, they see, well, no color distinction, I know that. But you can't tell which one they're following. Are they following the Arab brand of Islam, or are they following the ancient Islamic tradition which started in Africa? Just like Christianity. The Africans had Christianity before the Europeans had. But when we look at Christianity today, we're looking at the European brand of Christianity and not the African brand of Christianity. There's been a difference, a changing. And I think if we can ever get it together, here we are like the 10 blind men that's touching the elephant, different parts of the elephant. And the one that touches the side of the elephant says he's touching a wall. The one that touches the tail says he's got a hold of a rope. And so on down the line. We're talking about the same thing, we've got different perceptions of it.
I think the answer, I think just to wrap that up, I would say, the main thing is to believe in the one God. To believe in the God, the creator of the heavens and the earth, what we call Tawheed, the belief in the one. And we can unite on those bases.
Right.
God-conscious people should be together against those that want to oppress that kind of teaching, that kind of understanding, the enemies of man and God. I agree with you on that.
I want to say something before we proceed further. And we'll have some more questions in just a minute. We need to wrap up pretty soon, but Freemasonry has existed and still does exist in some Islamic countries. I'm in the process of doing research on that subject. I'm having a lot of difficulty getting data, but I'm continuing my research, and who knows, it might eventually evolve into a doctoral dissertation. But some Islamic countries have banned Freemasonry. I theorize that in many cases, Masonry was associated with British colonialism, and that has something to do with the opposition in the Third World. During the Young Turk Revolution at the right after the turn of the century. The Masons were quite active in that and supported Kemal Ataturk's efforts to overthrow the Ottoman Sultanate. And in gratitude, after Ataturk was in power, he closed down the lodges. But there was also in Turkey a group of unorthodox Muslims known as the Bektashi Order of Dervishes, many of whom were Freemasons. And I'm doing research on this particular sect. They're a type of Sufis. You know, so the Sufis are the mystical Muslims, and I think there'd probably be more openness toward Freemasonry among the Sufis than there would be among other Islamic groups, though I believe Mustafa does quote one Sufi in his book in opposition to Masonry. We just barely scratched the surface is what can be done on this subject. Yes, and I'm going to continue with my research. But Brother Dixon, you had a question? Oh, could you?
I think the brother was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't.
I
Yes.
thought that it might be appropriate at the time, since the imperial potentate is not here, surely I can speak for the imperial council and not so much the opinion of the imperial potentate, but I know for a fact that we are quite concerned about the relationship as far as our ritualistic work is concerned, and just recently we have revised it to a certain extent. If I may, just briefly to allude to some of the questions that you had, I think you're relating to some of the written work that has gone past, just like Masonry. But we are beginning to become more progressive as we go along. I know that at one time Shriners was considered the playhouse of Masonry. Now it's the display house of Masonry. So as we grow, we continue to work in conjunction with the other religions. As you know, when we open our book, open up in our house, in our concordant body, your 38th chapter of the Quran is in relation to our book of Job. We are trying to coordinate the two religions together, the old Mohammedan religion. If you also remember, at one time we used to be ancient Arabic order nobles of the mystic shrine. We changed it. We changed to ancient Egyptian Arabic order nobles of the mystic shrine. As we grow, we try to, in conjunction, to tie up. We use the pyramids, where the white shrine used the white stars. There's no, I don't know what the relationship of the stars, but we're trying to bring the two relations closer together. Parts of the realistic creation that we have, you could have some problems with that because at some point we're having problems with it and we're dealing with it. The sands, part of the religion, part of the custom. So I believe to cut everything short, and I'm sure this will help you in your beliefs and your thoughts. We have a historian. The imperial potentate has appointed a committee on history as far as Prince Hall Shrine is concerned. Reverend Buzzard's one, and Brian's another, and Walks is another, for this purpose, to eliminate that impression of conflict that we have between the two religions. We are trying to establish a relationship between Muslim and Christianity to the point that you don't feel that your beliefs are being treaded on by the same token. We have to uphold ours. It all comes down to one thing. You believe in one God, we believe in one God. So what we're trying to do is to compare and compile the thoughts between what you believe and what we believe. And that can only be done across the table of agreement, of conference, like we're doing now. I'm going to recommend to the imperial potentate that he continue this, but you have to have someone on your side that is willing to meet with our committee so that we can compare these beliefs and these thoughts that are in your mind, because some of them are quite negative and some of them are not quite true. And let's clear the air so that as we go on, we may not live to see the results. You may, but we may not live to see the results. But at least we can go on record as saying that some attempt has been made that black folk can come together in their beliefs. And that's my point.
I think it'd be a great idea.
Thank you very kind. I really appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
Brother Alvin, wanted to clear up one thing about the sand. If you will read in Matthew, you will find that John the Baptist came across the desert too. He didn't ride a camel, he wore one.
That's right. And I mentioned about the name. It was on December the 12th, 1900 at Philadelphia that the reorganizing session was held. There'd been a split 5 years earlier. one group followed John G. Jones, the other one didn't. And the group that didn't is the one we represent. And at that point, well, Imperial Potentate Isaac Holland called this meeting together. And the name Egyptian was adopted to distinguish the order from the White Shriners. Of course, it was from 1914 to 1929 the litigation was fought in which the Supreme Court declared on June the 3rd that black men had the right to wear the fez and call themselves nobles in Mystic Shrine. That's been celebrated as Jubilee Day since then. And 2 years ago, I had the pleasure of preaching at Jubilee Day in Dallas and really enjoyed it at Smith Chapel AME Church. And, but the term Egyptian there is significant. I once was a member of the ancient Arabic order. Now I'm in the ancient Egyptian Arabic order. I'm one of the few people who's had experience on both sides of the Masonic fence. But anyway, Brother Dixon, did you have a question? Okay. Any other?
I'd just like to make a comment, and that there was a statement made that Masonry is compatible with Islam, and I agree with that to an extent, because there's aspects that are compatible. I think one of the principles in Masonry I read is temperance, and temperance, it has a couple of definitions, one being strength and other things, but it also has a definition relating to the consumption of alcohol. And from the what I read out of the Masonic Bible, it says that it doesn't promote total abstinence but moderation. This is what I read. Okay, what I'm saying is this, is that Al-Islam forbids gambling and alcohol. The consumption of it, it forbids it. It says that it's some benefit in it, but it says that the sin is greater than the benefit. So we're encouraged to stay away from it. With that, I'd like to say that we are to judge people's behavior by the religion. We're not to judge the religion by people's behavior.
I think what he's saying, in that point is that, you know, we see folks that's not living up to the Islamic rule, or to any code of ethics, you shouldn't condemn the particular organization or the religion based on the individual, but look at the individual in light of what the religion teaches.
This book,
But don't you do that about Christianity?
Yes, well, everyone
Yes,
do that.
yes, you understand.
this book by Fosler, Brother Mingo. Brother Mingo.
Brother thing.
Why is there a difference in the spelling of the two words between the other groups and the blacks?
You talking about Muslim and Muslim?
Yeah.
The other,
Sort of like
It's basically,
United States.
Can I deal
Yes,
with that?
let Imam do it.
yes, okay, ma'am.
I'm the imam of the mosque in Jersey City, Muslim masjid in Jersey City. And that's a European game, because there's only one, okay. Okay, the question is regarding the spelling of Muslim and Muslim, which distinguishes the African-American Muslims from the Muslims from Saudi Arabia and around the world. But that's, again, part of the European game. There's only one Al-Islam, one Islam, there is only one Muslim, you know. And the correct spelling in Arabic would be mean with the fatha, which is, with the dhamma, which is equivalent to the U sound, lam, which is the L, equivalent to the L, and kesra, which is equivalent to the E or I, and amin, Muslim. That's the Arabic spelling. Now, vowels, as you know, historically, have been interchanged, you know, and some books will say Muslim, some books will say Muslim, some will say Mohammedans or Mohammedans, but there's only one correct spelling. Again, that's a European plot, just like us. You know, they distinguish, you know, the blacks from up north from the blacks from down south. You know, they give us all different kinds of names and categories. But again, that's part of that overall plot to divide and conquer. And we shouldn't get caught up into the Semitics of the thing. We deal with the principle of the thing.
I have one more comment regarding our brother operating the machine here. This book by Fazlur Rahman, an Islamic scholar, which is being used as a textbook, and of course I'm taking this semester, regarding the consumption of alcohol. He says that originally alcohol was not prohibited. Wine drinking was permitted in the early days by the Prophet Muhammad. Later, it was there was certain restrictions added. Then finally, it was totally prohibited. Obviously, there was quite a bit of alcohol abuse at Mecca.
Sure.
And God knows there's plenty of alcohol abuse in the shrine, and we should be concerned about that.
Brothers,
Okay, can I move to just one thing? Remember that we are based on two precepts, two concepts. The Islam, which is the Quran, which we pronounce Koran, we're going to have to deal with that. And the other one is based on the Holy Bible, which is the Christian side. I'm saying that the two of us have to get together. It seems like we can't go side by side, we're going to have to come together. We have taken in consideration that the two of them.
One more question from the back, way back there. This fellow's been trying to ask a question for 10 minutes now.
Really appreciate that.
What I like to say is what amazes me is the fact that when we start thinking in terms of our particular religion, we seem to have a bias. But if we all believe in supreme being and try to live accordingly, and I think we shouldn't get caught up in divisiveness. Think of it in terms of thinking that our religion has a priority over another religion. I would say that this universe, from what I know of this universe, is a very large, whatever you want to call it. And we, as human beings here on Earth, on this small place called Earth, in this big universe, should not be so engrossed in our own being. You know, and we should think in terms of trying to let other people and other ideas exist, rather than trying to say that ours is all consuming, should all consuming. Okay, so
Gentlemen, we have about 5 minutes or so before we have to be downstairs to get transportation to go for lunch. You must have your ticket and its color code for Friday, something.
Brother Daly, we have
Friday lunch.
Just one point. Thank you for being patient with us. And the fact that you invited us here to speak is definitely a step in the right direction in unifying that. And believe me, a lot has been accomplished. What we like to do,
Brother Daly, come here. Just a second.
we like to present to the Phylloxera Society
He's our first vice president.
of the Freemasons with a copy of the Holy Quran. I'm sure some of you already have it, but just as a presentation, which is one of the best things that a Muslim can give to anyone, is the Holy Quran. And we thank you for the invitation. And here I'd like to present this to you from myself, from Brother Ahmad Numan from the Muslim community. Thank you very kindly, and I'm sure you will share it.
Go over to the president and present it to, have it on display. You will have this on display.
Go ahead.
Gentlemen, this is the color code you must have for today's lunch. Okay?
Okay, go ahead.
The book should be on sale.
Wait a minute, you videotaping that?
Yes, sir. Of course, you all can get copies of this. I have no idea at this point, but of course y'all will.
Excuse me. Be sure to pull out your luncheon ticket, please. You're gonna need that luncheon ticket.
Video copies.
They're probably about $20 or so.
20.
Yeah,
Plus
20.
mailing.
Including the mail.
That'll be including mailing?
That'll include, yes.
Let me give you a check for it now.
Okay. Make it out to New Mind Production.
Take it out to whom?
New Mind Production.
Sure, go ahead, bro.
New Mind, M-I-N-D?
Yes, sir.
All we have to do is kind of scoop up that
I'm trying to find out.
He's still a little rough around there. He's like a lot of our Masons.
Yes.
Quran, what they call Al-Quran, were killed. And we was buried also right here in the West. But by the grace of Allah, inshallah, we'll also be raised by the Quran, by the light of the Quran. Now let me just move on. Here in Ohio, we see Holy Quran, what they call Al-Quran Mosque, Masjid, or something. Is the Masonic Hall. Okay, Holy Quran Mosque, the Masjid. And across the street, we see that they have the lodge, or what they call the temple. Now, as you go up into Masonry, up into the 33rd degree, or you have to at least go up to 32 degrees to become what they call a shrine. Now, the shriners are those that swear on the Holy Quran again. They take on Muslim attributes. They wear the feathers. They learn much about our religion. And we find many of the presidents. We find that Monroe, Roosevelt, Johnson, Jackson. We find that Washington, they were all Masons. So they had actually come into some knowledge of the Islamic religion. Nevertheless, in order to become the shrine, it's interesting the way they have it set up. You have the big lodge here, but once you reach a certain point, you can go across the street into the next one. So one is a temple, the other one, which they say is a mosque, at least on the outside. So this brought to my mind the evolution of the prophets, that we move from the temple, we move from Jesus, who said, he said, destroy this temple, and I will build it up in 3 days. So it shows us the evolution, that he moved from the temple. It moved from Jesus. And when we think of the temple, we have temples right here on our head. And one of their signs is to point to the temple. And they talk about the great temple of Solomon. And as I pointed out, they had 2 pillars, one on the right, one on the left, supporting the temple. So this is one of their signs representing these signs, the spiritual and the material. We have 2 ears and 1 sound, the conscious and the subconscious. And as Muslims, we salam to the right and we salam to the left. Is that correct? So, nevertheless, now they move from one to the other. Now we see from Jesus, he spoke of a comforter. So you move from the temple. You move from the pulsation. You see the emotionalism. See, here is a pulsation. And you move into a masjid. You move into a place where there's worship, where there's teaching, the talim, where there's teaching, where there's learning, where there's instruction. So you move from just an emotionally spiritual person, and you move into a rational person seeking knowledge and light. So it's interesting that I noticed that they move from their temple and they come across and they come to the mosque, which points out that you move from Jesus, because they have the 33rd degree system, which represented the life of Jesus. They say he died at 33 or somewhere there's about. So at his death, then we had Prophet Muhammad's birth. So they come from the 32nd degree lodge and they walk over into the mosque, according to what they call it. Now it's not a mosque, but they do learn about Islam. So you move from Jesus and you come into Muhammad. Now they say, I'm not an artist, so just use some of your imagination. They have the Shriners degree. And on the Shriners, the emblem is the so-called crescent. And in between the crescent, they have the Sphinx. And over that, they have the sword. Now the Sphinx and the base of the pyramid, as I pointed out, they accepted a God of the physical world. They've accepted these elements. Shriners' symbol is the crescent. And they have this Sphinx in the middle. But over the Sphinx is the sword. And what do we say about the sword? It represents the sacred word. We know that the sacred word of truth rules these elements. They say that it's over it. If you look at the sword, it just doesn't mean, according to their language, technically, they say it represents the setting of the old world and the rising up of the new world, of the Islamic world. But when you go deeper into their symbolism, they know that the sword is the sword of truth, the S word, the sacred word. It is the sacred word. Once we come into the sacred word, even these so-called elements. Now, I'm not talking about the physical elements. I'm talking about as they relate to us. We need something to rule our moral nature, our spiritual nature, our material aspect, and the wisdom, so that we won't walk around boastful thinking we're God. Allah is God, and that's what rules over that, because you can rise to a point, as Pharaoh did. He said, come on, Moses.
Author of several writings, one of them being Al-Islam, Christianity, and Freemasonry. For those of you that missed his earlier presentation, we bring him to you again. I'd like to introduce to you all, brothers and sisters, guests, Brother Mustafa El-Amin.
وَشَهَدُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وَشَهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. That is, I bear witness openly there's but one Creator, Allah, and I bear witness that Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah is his last and universal messenger, the seal of the prophets, the model human being. I greet you brothers and sisters here of Ohio, distinguished guests and friends. Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to first start off briefly by reading from the Holy Quran, Surah 4, Ayat 14 and Ayat 120. In most of their secret talks, there is no good. But if one exhorts to a deed of charity or justice or conciliation between men, secrecy is permissible. That's in parentheses. To him who does this, seeking the good pleasure of Allah, we shall soon give a reward of the highest value. Ayat 120, it says, Satan makes them promises and creates in them false desires, but Satan's promise, nothing but deception. Also like to turn to Surah 16. No, not Surah 16. I'm going to go to the Hadith. 40 is Hadith. Hadith number 17. And this is related by Muslim. It is reported that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, Verily, Allah has prescribed proficiency in all things. Thus, if you kill, kill well. If you slaughter, slaughter well. Let each one of you sharpen his blade, and let him spare suffering to the animal he slaughters. We see here the call for Muslims and human beings to strive for excellence, to strive to do the best in their endeavors, to be the best in all our levels of responsibility. Even though here it speaks to the slaughtering of animals, it speaks to the halal and the slaughtering of animals, it lets us know that in all of our activities that we should put our best foot forward. We shouldn't be lackadaisical in what we're about to do. We should strive to be the best. As Muslims, we should strive to be the best in our activities. We should strive to be amongst the foremost. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the order of our holy prophet Muhammad is after the order of Abraham. May peace be upon him. Abraham was the father of the faith. Abraham was an upright man, a devoted and sincere man, a man who was willing to sacrifice his own flesh and blood, his own son, at the command of Allah. But in place of sacrificing his son, Allah ordered him to sacrifice a sheep, a ram. This lets us know that we ought to sacrifice things that are close to us, that we ought to be charitable, that we ought to work together with one another, and we should not be selfish and hold those things that we have of value to ourselves. His son was close to him. The willingness, without hesitation, to slaughter his son. But Allah gave him a greater message to show that it was his intent and his willingness for which he would be rewarded. So he sacrificed a sheep. He sacrificed a ram, which is to tell us again we should share the knowledge. We should share what we have with the people. Now a ram, a sheep, in their particular secret society, and as I pointed out in my book, Al-Islam, Christianity, and Freemasonry, they have what they call a sheepskin apron, a lambskin apron. They use leather now, but that's what it was used before as a sheepskin. And they use it to cover themselves, and they say this is a badge of a Mason and is a symbol of innocence. And they allude to the fact that according to the Bible, that Adam, when he slipped and he heard God walking in the garden, that he became conscious of his shame and he covered his shame. So they tie it in there. But what they fail to realize is that that sheep must be slaughtered. It must be killed. The selfishness must be killed and shared with the people. Now we know that our order is to go out and propagate the message universally. We have a universal obligation, a universal responsibility to take the message to the ends of the earth. That's what our holy prophet Muhammad did. The light of al-Islam, it came to the Arabian Peninsula. It came to people that were pagans, that were backwards, illiterate, unlearned, savage type in their development and in their culture. But by the light of the Holy Quran, by the great light that came to the Holy Prophet Muhammad, it civilized those people there. It stood them up like men and women, and they became the torchbearers in science. They became the torchbearers in philosophy. They became the torchbearers in law and physics. And the light shined from there into Africa. It went into the other part of Africa, and it regenerated the African people who at one time already were advanced in certain areas. And it regenerated them. And the light shined from there into Europe, to the Europeans that was in the dark ages, that was in the cave of ignorance. And the European Renaissance came about as a result of that. Then we had the birth of the Moors that went all the way up into Spain and ruled Spain from 700 to 800 years, brought enlightenment to Spain there. And as Columbus came to the new land, Muslims traveled with him to the new land. So we see this great light. So it gives us the responsibility that the light should be taken to every corner of the earth. Since we're addressing Muslims and hopefully non-Muslims, we'll like to tie in a few other points concerning the responsibility of people that are informed, people that have knowledge, people that have some insight. The prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, originally the Bible says his mission was to go to a specific people. It says, go not to the Gentiles or the Samaritans, but to the lost sheep in the house of Israel, according to the Bible. But we see later on it came for him to expand it, not just to be confined to a specific group, but to expand it and take it throughout the earth. He said, take it to every nook, every cranny, take it throughout the world. That was the responsibility. Now, as we speak to those that are not Muslims, we find that they've come up with a concept of a cross. The cross is made like this, as we know. You have several crosses. You have the Tar, which represents death. There is the Hebrew alphabet, and you have the Ankh with the circle, which represents life. Nevertheless, the cross that they have here is just two bars, pointing in all four directions, north, east, south, and west. Now, they also say that a man was crucified on the cross. Now, Allah tells us in the Quran, no, he was neither killed nor crucified. It was just made to appear that way. Nevertheless, according to the Christian doctrine, they say that he represented the Word, which means it can allude to the fact that they were going to try and crucify the Word in every aspect of the earth, in all four directions, in the full circumference. A cross is angles of 90 degrees. 4 right angles give us 360 degrees, a circumference completion. So their attempt was to address and to kill the message and to hide the message universally and practice it secretly, but not allowing the people universally to get the message. How else can we tie that in? By the grace of Allah, if it pleases Allah, we read in the Holy Quran what Iblis said to Allah. He said, I will come to your man from before him, from behind him, from his left, from his right. That forms a cross. In the Bible, in the book of Job, it says Satan was walking up and down, to and fro. Am I right? So therefore, he was forming a cross. Not necessarily the cross that we think of today, but as a universal symbol, meaning that there would be an attempt to block the truth, to conceal the truth universally. So it had to be addressed universally also. So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a universal man. Allah raised up a universal man to address these issues. And we must address the issue in the same light. Now, in the Masonic order, they have what they call the 4 points of entrance, which tie in to the 4 cardinal directions: temperance, prudence, justice, fortitude. Temperance is restraint, strength, restraint. Prudence, the ability to govern and rule oneself by the use of reasoning. And then we have fortitude, which is the real strength and courage. And we have justice, dealing equally with one another. So we see these 4 directions that things have went in universally. Now, what did Allah say to Abraham? The upright in faith, a sincere and devout prophet, the father of the faith. Prophet Abraham, he looked at the sun. He said, this must be God until it set. He looked at the moon. He thought that would be God till it set. He was searching. He was searching for understanding. He looked at the star and watched the star as it fell, and he concluded that the power behind these elements, behind these objects, must have been God. Again, Allah tells us in the Quran that Abraham said to Allah, he said, show me how the dead will be raised. He said, not that I disbelieve, but to quench my intellectual curiosity, to strengthen my mental development, so to speak. Show me how the dead will be raised. And it is important that Allah said, take 4 birds, or 4 portions of a bird, place them on mountains, train them, place them on mountains, then call them, and they will come forth to you. Birds don't have to be trained how to fly. They already know how to fly if we logically look at it. So the training must be in obedience and in discipline, in obedience. So if we obey the command of Allah, if we have true taqwa in our hearts, when the call is made, we will respond to the call. And inshallah, we know that when we sleep, it is a minor form of death. We rest, we sleep. But when the adhan is called, it wakes us up from the dead sleep. When it is called in all 4 directions, it wakes us up. And we come to salah, we come to spiritual cultivation, we come to material cultivation. Now, in this society, the tied in, we find that the Masons and the Shriners, the presidents, the vice presidents, judges, lawyers, they were Shriners and Masons. What does this mean? This means, in their order, they have come into some knowledge, some light of the Holy Quran. They have come into some of the pure teachings of Islam, but they have taken it and they've concealed it. They've hidden it under a bushel basket. They went in their dark chambers with the Holy Quran, and they've hid this. They've hid it from the world, and they've hid it from us. So our obligation is to, inshallah, to pull the cover and let the people know. Now, in their secret society, they swear on the Holy Quran. We have evidence, we've done research to show that the presidents that have been Shriners, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and others have been Shriners. They take on attributes, Saladin, Mustafa, Rahman. They call their places mosques when they're in there. They swear on the Holy Quran. They're greeting Assalamu alaikum. They learn about the Kaaba. They learn about many of the ideals of Islam, and they practice it in secrecy. So we need to know these things because they have a certain perception of our religion, and they're working this way. They're moving subtly. Now, one other point here. We find, as we spoke on the 4th, we see Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who has been influenced by Islam. At least he read the Quran according to the order that he was in. At least he swore on the Quran and he learned certain things. He came up with what they call the 4 Freedom Awards. The 4 Freedom Awards. And the 4 Freedom Awards are what? Freedom of speech or expression, freedom of worship, freedom from fear, and freedom from want, economic or material freedom. So we see these 4 concerns as they tie in. Now, as we grow, as we move, we see in studying history, and studying the pyramids, and studying the ancient sciences, as I pointed out earlier, we see these 4 elements, which is on the pyramid, which is on the base of the pyramid, and the 4 angles as they come up, they represent the 4 elements: water, fire, air, earth, which allude to certain aspects in man. The water is the moral nature, the air the spiritual nature, the earth represents our material concern, and the fire represents the wisdom. So they've come to this same thing and they've tied it in. So dear brothers and sisters, we should understand the value of what we have. We should understand the value of the Quran. We should understand the value of the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad. And once we look at the great history of a common man, a man that was common like us, but was blessed by Allah to be risen up and to have an impact on the whole world. This is to let us know as common people that we are not the despised, we are not the rejected, but we have the same excellent human nature to move forward, inshallah. Now, in their secret order, again, they allude to the material and the spiritual. Again, I bring us back to the American dollar bill. On the back of the dollar bill, you have the pyramid with the eye over there, and you have the eagle also. Now, the eagle has 13 arrows, 13 berries, 13 stripes. All of these things here allude to the 13 colonies, the American colonies, all of which amongst them were Masons and Shriners. And as I bring this out, it is very, very important because they've come into certain knowledge, and their obligation is to keep that knowledge secret. And we have to know what we're working against behind the scenes. It is very important. It is essential that we understand this and that we pursue these things, that we go on out into the community and we spread the great knowledge. As I pointed out, the first president of this country, George Washington, was a Mason. He was a third-degree Mason, a master Mason, and he was the president. So he sort of set the precedent as the first president of what is required to become a president. So majority of the presidents were Masons and are Masons. Okay, they were Masons. So again, as we bring this out, I don't want to take too much time on this as I spoke quite a bit at the other conference. So I just like for us to know again, to emphasize that we are about sharing the knowledge and we must meet the task. And as they tried to crucify the word and bury the word, that we should be committed to unveiling the word and propagating the message of Islam. That's what we must do. As Muslims, that's what we should do. And on that note, I'd like to thank you. And inshallah, we'll stay in the fight, as the brothers say. We're at war. We're at war with lies. We're at war with deception. We're at wars with people that play with our religion. We're at war with people that come through the media to present our religion as a terrorist, infidelic religion. They'll support people that travel throughout the country, give them big media hype to give a wrong impression of our religion. So we have to be in the fight. We must come with Quran and the Sunnah, and anything that we have of good, we should share it with the people. That is our obligation. So let us stick to our obligation, brothers and sisters, and may Allah bless us. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah. Imam El-Amin. Thank you, Brother Mustafa El-Amin. Muslims that are here, we have